When most people get into scarcity, they call that person in their life that typically tells them it's not their fault and tells them, there's nothing you can do, and almost exacerbates the problem. Instead of calling those type of people and complaining to them, when you're feeling it, call someone that you respect, a peer, a mentor, and instead of sitting there complaining, just look to add value to their life. Because when you're in scarcity and you start adding value to someone else's life, they'll appreciate you, which means you appreciate above that level of scarcity. People that get destroyed by scarcity get into survival mode, where they're only thinking about themselves, and that's a paradox because ultimately, to be wealthier, it's all about the value that you create. The real objective is, how can you boost your cash flow? How can you boost that cash flow and have more of that end up in your pocket rather than getting on this entrepreneurial treadmill that a lot of people get kind of subject to? The entrepreneurial treadmill is running faster but not going further. Working harder but not having more show up in your life, even if it's showing up in other people's lives. And I know that revenue is kind of exciting to talk about. It's even better to kind of brag about every now and again, but it ain't what you make, it's what you keep. And it's the bottom line and it's the profit. So what are you taking home? What is your spendable cash? And in what way can we have the money you do earn end up more to your bottom line and to your pocket without having to work harder or run faster on that treadmill? That's the real initiative. That's the real objective. And I feel like economic independence is such an amazing advantage because if you can create more cash flow and focus on cash flow when you're looking at your finances, and when you get to that point where that's covering your expenses, everyone else will be struggling and just trying to make ends meet. You could take all of the income that you're making and reinvest it. But I'm going to tell you, no matter how much money you have, if you don't do things to get really clear about where you're in scarcity, and there's two things I want to share about scarcity. When people get stuck in it, they usually do the opposite of what it takes to get beyond it. So if you're ever feeling a sense of frustration, failure, fear, doubt, worry, or just a terrible mindset, or you have footprints of failure around you, or you just find you don't have the same energy, rather than being isolated, rather than just trying to work through that, consider two things. Number one, when most people get into scarcity, they call that person in their life that typically tells them it's not their fault and tells them, there's nothing you can do, and almost exacerbates the problem. Instead of calling those type of people and complaining to them, when you're feeling it, call someone that you respect, a peer, a mentor, and instead of sitting there complaining, just look to add value to their life. Because when you're in scarcity and you start adding value to someone else's life, they'll appreciate you, which means you appreciate above that level of scarcity. People that get destroyed by scarcity get into survival mode, where they're only thinking about themselves, and that's a paradox because ultimately, to be wealthier, it's all about the value that you create, and if you're only thinking about survival for yourself, you'll start doing the cutting and shrinking and isolating. So that's the first thing, is just call someone you know you can deliver value to. Don't complain to them about the situation. Just add value to their life, which might be as simple as people you know here and saying, what are you excited about? What are you working on? What are the obstacles you're facing? Find out real value that you can create and either connect them to someone or give them your own insights just so that you can get beyond it. The second thing is just call someone that you consider a mentor and tell them about your struggle. I find a lot of people that are deep in scarcity pretending like everything's always perfect and fine, and you can almost smell the stench on them, right? And so they're just trapped and stuck in it because it feels inauthentic. It feels difficult. When I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, I had this cash crunch right around that time. It was 2008. And all of a sudden, for the first time ever, my business didn't go up that year. It's crazy because that year we got New York Times and Inc. 500, and it was the first year I had a drop in cash flow in 10 years. So I would rather take the cash flow than the accolades personally. But when I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, it almost felt like it was a confessional. I was like, hell, people would say, how do you know about these 9 financial myths? I'm like, I just decided to test them out early on in life, and rather than defend and say that I'd never experienced them, I decided to write about it, hopefully alleviate other people's mistakes and pain so they don't have to make the same ones themselves, because those cost me 7 figures to figure out. You can pick that book up for $20, or hey, I'll just even give you one probably today by the end of the talk, so you don't have to go through that same type of experience. So as much as we're talking about money and finance, I really feel like if you're the asset and you got to treat yourself as such, that these are the things that you've got to eliminate. Otherwise, your money gets put at risk, or even your life gets put at a place where it's not ideal. All right. So any questions that you guys had when you came into the room? I'll just pause here for 1 second to see if anybody wanted to ask one. It's very quiet. All right. Autograph signings of the books that I didn't bring, that I was sending the digital version. So It shouldn't lower the value of the book, hopefully, if I sign it, you know? Although I did once sign someone's book, personalized it, and when we ran out of copies, I just started buying all Killing Sacred Cows under $20 on Amazon, so my intern was doing that. And then I was supposed to be on this guy's podcast, and I opened the book, and he sold it for like $17. I was like, I'm not doing this dude's podcast if he needed $17 back from the book that I wrote that I gave to him for free. Like, what the hell, you know? It's pretty enough that you should at least put it on the shelf and pretend that you read it. So, yeah, it's just real talk right there, you know? Yeah. Yeah, I wrote this book called 5 Day Weekend that's in stores right now, and the whole insight there is there's 4 parts to the book, but the design is, what if you just had to deal with the minutia 2 days a week, not 5 to 7 days a week? And you start to organize your life. Like, I remember early on in my life, I just kind of worked all the time, and then all of a sudden I started to create boundaries and structures and rules, especially within my organization. Like on Mondays, that was my business meeting day, so I'd meet with everybody, and then I didn't have them emailing me all week and bringing up all this stuff, so I had the freedom on Tuesday to actually write, where before I didn't have that time to write because I was always the person that everybody was coming to for answers and solutions. And as soon as I started having them answer their questions on their own, and like I remember being in this course in Chicago, and I had to leave Utah, and the course instructor said, don't talk to your team during the entire time until you land again. Well, when I landed in Chicago, I already had 7 voice messages from my assistant, right? And I just said, well, I'm not gonna respond. And then when it was over, I heard and called her, and I was like, hey, Amy, like, let's address all this. And she goes, oh, it's all taken care of. Like, part of the reason some people come to you all the time is because it's bad habits, and it's the habits sometimes that you create for them. Like, I'll admit, when I started doing more writing and less one-on-one interaction with some of our clients, I felt less valuable for part of that. Because I wasn't getting all the, hey, this is so cool, and hey, oh, thank you so much. I'm just writing, and then when you write, like, sometimes you get like a 1-star review if someone hates your stuff and you find out they're just in finance and they don't like when you have a different opinion than them. But still, right, it's just a little bit different. You'll get that immediate feedback. So as you look into your own life, whether it's your finances or whether it's your business, I think you are the author of this and you're holding the pen, so where would you like to write the story differently? Like, part of it might be you just feel like you're overpaying taxes, you don't have the right tax team, right? Like, and so what about just changing that? I mean, I'm here so we can definitely help with that. Or maybe it's just that you don't have the cash flow that you want. What would it take to get the cash flow you want? A, are you investing enough in yourself, in your skill sets, in the people that you spend time with, in your networks, in the people that you hire? Like, where are you investing your dollars? And maybe if you're investing in a retirement plan, but you're not completely happy with where your business is, maybe reconsider and redirect those funds from the business or from the investment into the business. See, because as a business owner, we have this unique situation that our business is an investment. Now, we have to be careful and calculated about this because some business owners spend all of their money back into their business without having a way to capture that or transfer that to personal wealth. Like, there's business wealth and there's personal wealth. That's why it's so critical that A, you always pay yourself. If you're not paying yourself and you're going, okay, I'm not going to pay myself because we're growing right now and I need to hire new people and I need to do all this kind of stuff. If you're not paying yourself, your value of your business is sinking because now it's completely reliant upon you being the cheapest possible labor. And who wants to buy a business that's just one individual that's fixing all the problems, and then if they buy it, that person's going away? That's going to be damaging. But most importantly, it's damaging from a psyche standpoint, and that you deserve to be paid. And if you're paying everyone else, maybe they're not pulling their weight. Maybe they're not doing their job. Maybe you're actually funding their life before you're funding your own. And I don't know, I just feel compelled to say this. Never really talked about this in front of a room like this before, but I see it happen far too often in business. So I'm not telling you to get addicted to investing more into your business at the expense of a quality of life now. I'm saying invest enough into your business that you have the freedom to start transferring and transitioning in from the bottom rung to the top rung. The bottom rung is when you're doing anything you're incompetent at. If you're doing something you're incompetent at just in the name of saving money, it's destroying energy and it's taking up too much time. Even if you get to the next rung, which is doing things you're competent at. When you're doing things you're competent at, it's not driving energy. It's not bringing massive value to you. You're just doing it a lot of times in the name of, well, I don't know who else could do this right now. And if that's the case, maybe question, are you good at delegating and do you have the right team, right? And then if you get up to the place of excellence, excellence is where the biggest trap is. Excellence is that place where you can do it better than anyone you know, but you don't want to do it, or you don't love doing it. You're just the best at it. And so a lot of times people get stuck there. But I learned this from Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, is when you transition from excellent to unique, what are the things that you can do that no one else can do? Like, are you being the business owner? Like, to me, the rarest commodity in any business is the vision of that business. Vision creates the culture, and that culture creates the right attraction to hire the right people. When I hear people say, well, in my community, there's just no one to hire. There's no one that's capable. That's just not the case. Like, we've had people leave from the East Coast and fly to Utah where they're not Mormons, they're scared of hell as Mormons, and they still come to Utah because they're excited about the vision, or they read the book. So what if, like when I talk about vision, what I mean by that is something that's clear and compelling that doesn't live on the wall, but it lives in someone's heart, right? Like when JFK in 1961 got on the 3 channels that you could choose at that time, and that's all there was, he said, we're gonna land a man on the moon and return them safely home within this decade. And people at NASA crapped their pants and then completely changed how they operated. Now, my son that's 11 says we never landed on the moon, which even if we didn't, just the amount of production to have us believe it is super impressive. I think either one is just as impressive as accomplishment is what I told him. But the bottom line here is that came from a vision. And if you already know how to accomplish something, it's not a vision, it's a goal. A vision is something out of your reach that's a bit of a stretch that's gonna require other people's support to get you there. So question, is your vision compelling enough to drive profits regardless of circumstance? If your vision is smaller and there's some economic turmoil or issue, that might collapse you. But if our vision is greater than our problem, we can persevere. Here we are, financial talk, 101. Actually, like this is what drives it because it's the container we live in. Like if you're just working in exchange for money, there's only so much motivation behind that. But if you're working because you're creating something that you enjoy, that you love, that you think matters, like at Wealth Factory, my company, I get super excited when I know we're gonna work with first-generation entrepreneurs and show them how they can stack the odds in their favor to create a life that they absolutely love, change their family's financial future, and ultimately their family's destiny. Because my family didn't come from having a lot of financial insight and information. My great-grandfather came from San Giovanni, Italy in 1913. I went there last year. I don't even know how he got to Naples from San Giovanni. It's up in the national park. They didn't have like we crossed 50 bridges to get there. Like I don't even know, like that would have been like, in today's world, I don't even know how my kids would do it. They would die because they're like, wait, there's not YouTube? Like, no, you have to walk. Like my kids, I don't know if anyone else has this, my kids are stupid genius. And what I mean by stupid genius, they're genius at making me think they're stupid. Like, just the other day, I'm like, hey, will you sweep the porch? They're like, what do you mean by sweep the porch? I'm like, will you just hold this and walk? They're like how? And the next thing I know, I'm sweeping the porch, and I'm going, these geniuses, they got me sweeping the damn porch. They know how to do it. You know how I know they know? I once was trying to, like, buy something on Apple, on iTunes. It's a 17-digit passcode I have. They're like on the other side of the wall being like, I think that's an amperstamp. That's an exclamation point. That's a, no, small. I mean, like, they can decode anything and pass the game in 2 seconds, but they act like they don't know how to do these things, right? Like, so when I think about my great-grandfather coming over, separating from his family for over 7 years, meeting his daughter for the first time when she just turned 7, to be a coal miner, they didn't know anything about money. They didn't know anything about finance. There was no guidance. All they knew is, we better work hard, otherwise we can be separated from our family. And that kind of work ethic is admirable, but it doesn't create a life of fulfillment and abundance. It creates a life just full of scarcity. His oldest daughter, her name was Mary, and she applied for welfare, and they found that she had $550,000 in her savings account. Now, it's impressive that she had that much in her savings account, considering I think an equal amount was buried in coffee cans somewhere in the backyard. I'm not even like that's how the Italian family, they would just put money in Folgers coffee cans and put it in the cellar. And she also collected more toilet paper than any human being alive. If that's ever a rare commodity, she would have been so wealthy. I think she stunk. Maybe she should have used more of it than just stored it, but you know, like that's kind of what happens is they never learned about money. They just learned that it was scarce, that it was hard work to get it. And they didn't have any financial team around them, so they just kind of went about life in the dark. I feel like I have a chance in my own family that now we have a different issue. Our issue is how do we make sure that I don't raise entitled brats because we have money, right? What are the things that we can do that allows them to continue to have vision, purpose, work ethic, learn some of the lessons rather than just skip some of them, because a lot of people skip those lessons after their family's a little bit wealthy, and then it becomes difficult for them to have a real touch with reality. So what can I do to make sure that they're chasing purpose and money's the byproduct rather than chasing money or just hoping that it comes into them without expecting? That's the real issue with money is just a byproduct of value. So you got your mental capital times your relationship capital equals all your financial capital, okay? So if you have ignorance or misunderstanding or myths or misinformation or any of that in your mental capital, hard work won't compensate. You could be enthusiastically running in the wrong direction, right? Doing absolutely the wrong things to help you out. Relationship capital. If you have the wrong relationships in your life, that's going to lead to debt. If you're not managing them, you're not spending time with the right. And what I find is the people that are most dramatic typically find the most time in someone's life. But the people who are most dramatic aren't always the most productive. Actually, they're usually counterproductive. So the bridge between these two things is business. Business is the bridge of how you take your mental capital and you add value to people's lives. The more value you add, the more money that comes as a byproduct of that. So money is the receipt. Dollars follow value. So the big question here is, how do you deliver more value? Well, if you have less concern and worry about finances because you're economically independent, you'll be able to create more value. If you can reinvest back into your business and yourself without the fear of, is this going to take away any of the stability in my family life or finances, when that's gone, you can swing for the fences. Your vision can absolutely change. Most people's vision is absolutely contained within what they think they have the financial means to do. Hell, the government doesn't ever worry about that. Just use the government. They don't worry whether they have the financial means. They just do it, right? Okay, don't go into $21 trillion of debt. But, I don't want that to be a limiting factor. So, the more mental capital you have in the world of money, because money is lifestyle. Money is part of your life because you're living in society. Are you going to be able to master that, or is it going to master you? And if you want more financial capital in your life, it really comes down to this. How can you reach more people, or how can you more deeply impact the people you currently reach? That's the questions. These are such an attentive audience, like really focused. Nobody's even, Questions about this so far? Yeah. The more mental capital you have, the less mistakes, the more value you add, and if you apply your mental capital to the relationships out there in the world, you'll have more financial capital. You can be extraordinarily intelligent and broke. The way that can happen is if you don't share it with people outside of your family, for example, because family members usually don't write checks, right? Other people do. So the more people you're reaching with that intelligence, which that's where I think about leverage. Like I reach more people when I wrote books rather than when I just, met with people at their kitchen table 15, 20 years ago. Right? I started creating video series. Why? Because I wanted to be able to impact more people even while I was sleeping and making sure that I could get that out to people. That was a way to take this mental capital because I just have like this photographic memory in finance. But if someone talked technology with me, I am very stupid in technology. Every now and again I can impress my wife because when she's not looking, I can restart a computer and all of a sudden it works. I'm like, oh, I got it fixed for you. That's about the extent of my technology expertise. But when it comes to my financial expertise, I can read an article from 10 years ago and still remember it today. I know how to pick it apart. So I have this mental capital that most people don't want to pay attention to that every single day. And it's a big universe, so how can we simplify it? How can we narrow it down? How do we reach more people and how do we impact them more deeply? That's this model of the value equation. So you're either one idea or one relationship away from the next level of prosperity. One idea or one relationship away from the next level of prosperity. And the key is, I found some of the quick ways to build relationships. Like when you came here, you wrote a check to be here, and all of a sudden you met a bunch of people, and you had connections directly to people. Some people, they don't want to do that. Sometimes that's the fastest route to finding the right individuals, right? You just write a check, and then all of a sudden you have access to relationship capital or mental capital. What I found is most of the mental capital I got wasn't going to class. Most of the mental capital I got was my own experience. When I was 22 years old, I decided to go on a 2-year, 2-month journey where I flew all around the country to find the best financial minds. The way this came up was in 1998, when I started in finance, I was selling mutual funds and life insurance. And mutual funds were doing really well in 1998 and 1999. And so I took my family, the Italian side of the family, my mom's side, and I started having them cash in their double E bonds. Anyone have double E bonds or know about double E bonds? I mean, those are pretty, rare today, but they had them, physical bonds. We cashed them in and we put them in the stock market. And all of a sudden they went from earning nothing over 10 years to earning 10% over 6 months. So now I was like a little financial Einstein that they absolutely loved and adored because they were making a bunch of money until the year 2000 came. Anyone remember the year 2000 with the stock market? All of a sudden, after a decade of it just going up, it went down. Family reunions got really awkward. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm showing up and no longer am I financial Einstein. It's like, hey, what the hell happened to my money? I thought that was my name for a minute. And so I'm sitting there, talking to him, and I didn't want to give him the excuse of, have you ever heard the one that people say the market's on sale? Like, that's a terrible idea. That's like, okay, I go buy a car today and then tomorrow it's half off. Well, I already bought the car. It doesn't really do me any good, right? So I didn't want to use that excuse. Or anyone heard of dollar cost averaging? Dollar cost averaging, who's here to be average? Who said, I'm going to sign up because I can't wait to be average? Like, it's basically saying you buy no matter what. And this is why I got kicked off CNBC, which is one of the things, kind of mentioned from Aaron from stage. On December 24th of 2008, I was on CNBC, and they said, hey, Garrett, where should people invest their money? I said, well, for sure they shouldn't invest it in the stock market. And then it just cut to a commercial about the stock market, went completely dead, and I never heard from anyone ever again. Like, it was just, hello? Like, I was on the, so anyway, I just didn't want to put my family in the situation where it was outside of their control, outside of their knowledge. It felt really risky. They started getting stressed out about it. So that's why I decided I'm just going to figure out what's really going on here. Because there's one story that's being told, which is when I was in early finance, all I was being taught is how to build relationships and how to sell. Maybe 2 to 5% on financial instruments. It was almost all on building rapport and selling something. But as soon as the market went down, I realized I was selling something I didn't know enough about. So every month I flew somewhere. It was nice. I wasn't married yet, so I flew and I met with people in New York. I met with people actually in Phoenix that were really, well-known financial people. And in that journey, I figured out what a family office was. A family office was what the ultra affluent and wealthy had. They had a financial team that actually did due diligence, and their main focus was, we're going to save this person tax first and foremost because that's a guaranteed return. And in that moment, that's when I said, I'm going to become an efficiency expert. Because efficiency is guaranteed where the stock market isn't guaranteed. And that's where it became, what are all the strategies around tax that can put more money into your life? What are all the strategies around interest that you can lower that and keep more of your money? What are all the strategies around investments where you can protect the downside and get rid of the expenses? And what are all the strategies around insurance to avoid duplicate coverages or improper structure? Like, you want to have in your car insurance and homeowners insurance, have higher deductibles, because if someone comes into your shop and they're like, the insurance company charges something completely different when it's going through that versus someone that's paying cash. Like, in a lot of situations, it's a huge pain in the ass to deal with insurance companies a lot of times. And they're not worried about the size of the claim, they're worried about how frequent someone claims. So I'm always like, I'm not the best driver, so I just, I still have a high deductible, and I've gotten in a fender bender, and I just paid cash for the situation. Insurance is meant to be for catastrophic events. So if you raise your deductibles and then instead use those higher, the higher deductibles, use those dollars to buy higher limits of liability, higher property damage, all those kind of stuff, then you're protecting yourself from the catastrophic. An umbrella policy is one of the cheapest things in insurance that can protect you, your legacy, and your future, that for a couple $100 a year that almost no one has, right? It's because they have the wrong philosophy of insuring inconsequential things rather than catastrophic things. All right, I'll just pause once again, see if there's any questions that, yes. I still don't have any books.
No worries.
Okay, great.
In this group, will you be mentioning, things that you suggest other than the stock market, other than what you just kind of wrote down, tax strategies and stuff like that?
Yeah, so the first and foremost is you pay yourself first, and then you get more efficient, step 2. Step 3 is you want a midterm strategy. The midterm strategy, if you do it right, that works really well, is the same thing that banks do with their money for a third of their reserves. And that's, you want cash value that's in a tax-favored environment that can earn 4 or 5%, which is known as overfunded insurance. So an insurance umbrella that is life insurance that gives you tax advantage cash that you can access before 59 and a half, that you don't have to pay tax on, and it has a minimum guarantee of at least 4%. You don't want anything less than a 4% guarantee on that. That's your midterm strategy. Then from there, you want to look and say, what investments make sense based upon who you are? Are you a good real estate guy because you know how to fix things up and flip them? Are you good with tax liens because that happens to be something you pay attention to every day? Are you good at hard money lending? Are you good at the stock market? Are you good at businesses? Are you good at I know people that actually made $60,000 a year because they love Disneyland and they created a website on how to maximize your experience. I was like, I don't even know how the hell they turned that passion into $1, but they did, you know? It's better to invest in things you know, and if you don't, you stay in cash. And here's the thing. Rookie investors always stay invested. Pros sit in cash, and they deliberately invest. They automatically save and deliberately invest when the opportunities are ripe. So I'm not going to tell you everyone should invest in any one category because it really depends on who you are. For me, I invest in my businesses, and I invest in the cash value, and that's pretty much it. I do a captive insurance agency, which is a place that I can store money and have some basic investments in there in a tax-favored way. That's pretty much my strategy. Now, some of them, the banks are financing some of my insurance cash values, some I'm putting money in. So I've got several instruments, but I don't get involved in real estate. I used to have 100 properties. That was a full-time job more than my job, and I hated it. So I got rid of most of those. So you really got to get dialed in on what your investor DNA is, what investments make sense based upon who you are, and be patient. Good investors are more patient. The rookies are impatient, and then they just go with trends, and they end up losing a bunch of money. Yeah?
One thing Aaron asked me was to tell you if you didn't get into the 401k, obviously, yesterday, I realize you won't be able to get to beat, but he really near and dear, and obviously the group thought it was a pretty big deal. At least it touched on it, he did say.
Okay. So for those of you that love 401ks, I'm about to crap on your dreams. I'm sorry. So retirement plans are concerning. They really came about because companies used to offer pensions, but they erroneously ran the pension numbers at earning 8%. And the market didn't come close to that. So they ended up basically going bankrupt with their pensions. And so an alternative was to just tell people, hey, we'll match a contribution that you produce, and it's all on you. So a lot of employers started offering that because, A, they thought this was a good tax advantage, but it's not a tax deduction, it's a tax deferral. So you might end up paying more tax when you take the money out if you have more success, less tax deductions, or the government raises the tax rates, which there's only been 10 years in the previous years of the last 100 where the tax rate was lower than it is today. We are at a historically low rate where the top rate back in the 50s was 92%. That was the top rate. So that would really suck if you deferred your taxes and then all of a sudden you got to take it out and the taxes have skyrocketed. The top average is 61.7% since inception. We're at 37.5. So this is my concern. What if you're deferring your tax into a place where now you don't want to spend it because you don't want to pay the taxes? See, if you hate paying taxes today, you're just going to hate paying them more in the future. I was telling you about my grandma, who she hated paying taxes, so they put money in a retirement plan. And then when she was 70 and a half, she was forced to take a certain amount, otherwise there was a 50% penalty plus tax. Her response was a 4-letter word that I heard never before from her, but many times after, okay? So that's the concern. If you're also providing that for employees, you're now a fiduciary, which means you're responsible if they feel like you didn't get the very best plan or you were oversold on the performance. And if you go to YouTube and look up 60 Minutes and look up, 401k problems, and Time magazine had a cover where it said why it's time to retire the 401k. I just feel like it's a false sense of hope that people are going to have something when most of your employees have higher debt and paying high interest rates on it and not enough savings, and they're putting money into a plan that's locked away till 59 and a half. Otherwise, there's a penalty. And if they borrow, there's restrictions on how they have to pay it back. It's not actually helping them, even though we feel like it's a benefit, even though we're told this is a good recruiting tool. Vision culture, who you are, that's your biggest recruiting tool. And if you really want to help them, you can still pay them what you're paying them on the match. You get the same benefit, but they can use that for things that are actually going to improve their financial life, not give them false hope for the future.
So you say take the money and yourself, but what if we want to, I want to take care of my employees. So did I not hear you say anything about taking care of the employees?
Yeah, the money that you're matching for them right now, you could match towards them paying off a loan, put towards their own private plan, put towards a house payment, towards things that can really help them out versus locking their money away. So this group is really unique because I speak at a lot of places where the business owner only did it for their own personal gain and tax advantage. You did it because you want to support and help your employees. So we've had times we've gone into organizations and met with all the employees one-on-one and actually built a plan where it frees up cash flow, they pay off loans, they restructure loans, they improve the credit. They're totally different people after that situation where most of them, if they're in struggle, they borrow from that plan, if it's allowed, right? And so they kind of keep false starting because their other things aren't handled. They don't have enough liquidity. They don't have enough protection to kind of insure against unforeseen circumstances. So it's giving them a little bit more comprehensive structure. And one of the things Aaron was talking to me about is maybe we do some really short, direct, easy webinars just for you guys and your employees on what the options are, help educate them financially, and see what can happen from there. And so we would be very open to that. And you know, that influences a lot of people and is very in line with our mission. Yeah. Yeah, you would still get your same tax advantage. And for them, there are things that they can do in a similar tax structure or other tax structures with what they do. And let's be really clear why 401ks exist and get to the early stages of it. We know the pension problem was really a big part of why they came about. It was a way to kind of shield and transfer responsibility. But the reason it caught fire was because, think about it, if you're an institution, what do you want from people? Money. How often? How long do you want to hold on to it for? And how much do you want to give people back on a withdrawal? This was the ideal plan for that. Why? Because people are automatically enrolled now 70% of the time. It's locked up till 59 and a half. They don't want to take the money out because they're going to be taxed. And for the institution, not only are they getting a fee on your money, they get to take a fee on the government's money too. So these brokers are just spokespeople. They actually believe in what they're saying. I've interviewed a ton of them. Now, I've changed a lot of their minds if they sit down, and I've gotten in some pretty heated debates that I would say 9 out of 10 times, if they have any intellectual honesty, we get to the same place. Every now and again, it's too much of their income wrapped up in it for them to even hear it clearly, right? But there's other things they can do to make money. So I don't really think that the brokers are out there intentionally telling you that this is something to do, knowing what the problems are going to be. They don't know the problems because the problems are just starting to happen. These are still really new in the world of finance. But where they're going to happen is people are now retired. The government now needs more money and they add taxes to it. We're starting to see what the fees were, and at least a lot of books are coming out about how to lower the fees of that to really improve it. So, look, I don't want to leave you in a place of disappointment and disarray as I kind of address some of these things. The key is we want to take a step at a time. Want to master your money? Want to figure out the things that you could do to improve your finances? Click here and check out more videos like this on Money Matters.